Thank you, Gabe. I think those look wonderful. Thank you. Jeff Bostic, who's our media specialist at the Central Library, put all of those posters together. You can see them in the windows at the Central Library. And why don't we get started since it's a little after 6? Shatora?
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us on this chilly Friday night. We hope you all have the opportunity to watch this documentary, Black Men in White Coats, with Dr. Dale Akadudu. Excuse me, I'm having a hard time pronouncing his name, so I'm going to stick to calling him Dr. Dale. I don't want to disrespect him. And it was directed by Michael Autry. Now, if you've seen any interviews they've done about the documentary, the one thing they want everyone to know is that this was a movement of empowerment. They were worried because Black men are not going into the medical field as much as they were previous, and they're only 2%, making up 2% of the medical field and dying at alarming rates. So they both felt that if they could put a spotlight on this issue, that it would open up dialogue and hopefully empower and change for the community. So can we start with introducing some of our panelists? And today we have Dr. Terry, MD, resident pathology at the URMC Rochester. Would you like to say anything?
I'm not sure he's with us just now.
Oh,
Come back to him.
well, yeah, we'll come back to him. We've got Dr. Lewis, MD, resident cardiothoracic surgeon, also at the URMC. Are you here with us? And would you like to say anything?
On.
Present. How's it going? I'm Dr. Clauden Lewis. I'm one of the residents at the Cardiothoracic Surgery program. I'm year 5 of 6, and I am happy to be here.
We're happy to have you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
We've got Dr. Cole, research assistant, professor, orthopedics, Center for Musculoskeletal Research, Surgery, and Cancer Control. Are you here with us?
I am indeed. How are you?
Great, and yourself?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. I'm not an MD, but I am a researcher, so I'm happy to be included into the mix. My research focuses on cancer-related muscle wasting in pancreatic cancer patients who have advanced diagnoses. So I'm happy to be here and can't wait to communicate with everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Man, that's very important work.
Chris.
And we have Dr. Wharton, PhD RN, FNP-BC, CNS, Assistant Professor, Clinical Nursing, Associate Dean for Equity and Inclusion at the School of Nursing. Are you here with us?
I am. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thanks for having me. This is an incredible forum. I look forward to having a discussion with my colleagues. As you mentioned, I also am not a physician. I'm a board certified nurse practitioner, and I'm also a researcher. My research interest focuses on HIV prevention with a special focus on sexual minorities. So specifically African-American men who have sex with men.
Mm-hmm. Again, we don't all have to be MDs to, be part of the solution. So welcome. We have Dr. Fowler, MD candidate, class of 2022, the Ohio State University College of Medicine. How are you?
I am doing well. How about yourself?
Doing great.
Again, just like everyone else, I'll echo, I really appreciate you all having me on today, and I'm very excited to speak with everyone.
Well, thanks. Thanks for being with us. We have Dr. McKnight, mental health counselor, UR medicine, pediatric behavioral health and wellness. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing well. How you doing?
I'm doing good.
I'm sorry, my computer screen is freezing on me, but I'm doing well. I'm not an MD. I'm in my first year of.
Okay, you've
First
gone to mute again.
You're on mute.
I'm sorry, I'm having difficulty all around with my laptop today.
Tell us.
Ag- Again, I'm not a MD. I'm in my first year of mental health counseling at UR Medicine, Pediatric Behavioral Health and Wellness. I'm excited to be on this panel with you all today as well.
Great, thank you.
And we welcome you. All right. Well, hopefully the audience with us will chat us some questions. But one thing that we did want to know was, if you've watched the documentary, which we hope you all have, can you name the single feeling that you were left with immediately after completing the film? And anybody can.
I can take a first stab at this question. When I first watched the film, so many emotions, but I would probably say one that comes to heart first was almost a feeling of being exonerated. The path to becoming in some of these specialties that are at least traveled by people that look like us. I've noticed that there's a lot of attrition on the way. From people who are applying who don't get in, from people who are doing poorly on the exam, or people who are actually doing very well and are not considered. There's just a lot of attrition. And what this film brings to light, I believe, is kind of a truth perspective to what's going on and the concerns of what we have right now. And 2% is a very small number when we're probably 5-6 times that in population. So something's going on.
Thank you.
I'll follow up. Perhaps not a feeling or an emotion, but I felt compelled at the very end of watching this. There's a particular scene where the young man is talking with Dr. Dale on the telephone after the 5 months after the summit. And to hear the young man cry, to hear what he was experiencing, and to know that each of us has experienced that in some way, shape, or form, and in many ways continue to experience that. It makes me feel compelled to act, to be there for young people as they are figuring things out, be it going into a career in medicine or just figuring out what are the next steps to getting through. As we're talking about kind of the life experience of Black men in this country, it doesn't just start once you become 18. Okay, now you're a Black man, now things start happening to you. It happens as you're developing. And so to hear all of this that was happening to this young man and to feel it viscerally, it made me compelled to kind of act and want to continue acting in these circles.
We have a couple of viewers that agree with you. They felt compelled and recognize that in that scene as well, so you're not alone. Would another one of our panelists like to let us know how they felt? Or
Yeah, so I actually didn't get a chance to watch the film yet. I'm on my I just finished my surgery rotation, so my hours have been pretty crazy. But I actually know Dr. Dell personally. When I was a pre-med trying to get into medical school, he was one of the people that I reached out to and met with several times, and he helped me to get to where I am today. And Dr. Capers, who was also in the video, in the movie, is one of my mentors, and he was at Ohio State University before he switched sides on us and went to go to Texas with Dr. Dell. But but they played an instrumental part in my life and me getting to where I am today. So just knowing how a lot of those, you know, kids felt in the movie, I can personally, you know, attest to that, because I had those, some of those same feelings, especially when you want, you know, to achieve something so bad and you don't know really where to turn, because no one looks like you is currently in that profession. So that's plays a huge part in and why I do a lot of talks like this. I try to pay it forward and give it back as much as I can.
That's awesome. So I saw an interview that Dr. Dale gave, and he was saying that, you know, this has been his vision for over 8 years. It was in his mind, and he was posed with the question of making a, you know, like a big blockbuster, or making what they made, a documentary for the people, to empower the people, to bring to the people, and keep creative control over it. And the director had that same outlook that you had, Dr. Fowler, that excuse me. I'm sorry. Fowler, MD candidate, 2022 though. He had the same outlook as you. He said that this is really important to him to make this film because there was no representation. He felt that if he would have seen Black doctors as he was growing up, the trajectory of his life may have been different. So thank you for your commentary. Does anyone else have anything to say about how the film made them feel, or anything about seeing the film? No? Okay, well then we'll head to question 2. And our viewers, please feel free to chat us some questions that we can ask the panelists. How does the lack of Black men in the field of medical school affect non-Black patients? And anyone feel free to take this question.
All right, I'll take a stab at this one as well. I think it's important that patients who are not even like me see me and other people like me at a position of being a physician. And I say that because not only is it an empowering experience, it also gives an opportunity to kind of change the stereotype, so that when you see someone, you can see that they don't necessarily are a basketball player, you know, because they're a tall Black man, or that they're a football player because they have a certain body size and they're African American, but that they're seen as something that can be scholarly academic achievements, you know, that represents an opportunity for them to take care of patients on a daily basis, and not be represented and seen as only the individuals who are cleaning the institutions. Many of the hospitals that we work for, and it's very, very true for many of them, you know, if you were to look for African Americans who are physicians in the hospital, there are very, very few. I'm 50% of the Department of Surgery as far as trainees, if you think about it that way. And if you were to go to environmental services, you would see that it's probably 50% African Americans there. If you go to the individuals who are sterilizing the operating room equipment, it's probably close to 70% African American there. And it makes you wonder what's going on. There are bodies here, but they're not being funneled into these opportunities.
And I think it's speaking from the standpoint of a patient, you know, I interview a lot of medical students. And the thing that I would like to understand is, how can you identify with a patient that you don't understand their background? So when I look at patients who have to be attended to by doctors who don't have a clue what their background is, how can that doctor actually service that patient from a holistic standpoint? You know, if you don't understand what it's like to come from an environment where you can't afford your medication, or where, you know, there's so much disbelief or distrust in a community, then how can you adequately relate to that patient? And if you can't relate to that patient from a standpoint, from that perspective, you can prescribe any medicine that you want to that individual. Does not mean that you're taking care or you're being attuned to the holistic view or in what it encompasses to take care of a human being. So I think that, patients really need to walk in and see someone who they feel understands who they are as people. First of all, to build that trust so that I could tell you things that I may not even be telling my spouse or my parents. But then also to understand that you're not talking at me, but you're talking to me. So as a researcher, I think that it's very important also that we have individuals who look like the community that we would like to research, for us to be able to go in and communicate authentically with those individuals and to help them to understand it's important for us to have minorities in research. And here are the reasons why I believe that it's for you and you can trust me.
Powerful. You're right. We need to be in research. Anybody else like to tackle that question? Again, it was, how does the lack of Black men in the field of medical school affect non-Black patients?
Yeah, I completely agree and can echo with what Dr. Lewis was saying. It is really important for the majority to see African American males in a position in which we're taking care of patients and providing a service to the community, because it's very easy to turn on any major media outlet and see that we as African American males aren't being portrayed in the best light. And a lot of people in the majority don't live in communities in which Black males are present. So the only thing that they know is what they see on television and things like that. So it is very important for us to be able to take care of the majority, and also as a personal side, kind of referring to what Mr. Cole was saying. When I spent a summer in Atlanta, Georgia, doing research and working with a physician there. And Atlanta actually has the second most Black doctors as far as city in the country. But every time I went to go see a patient, especially when it was Black patients, particularly, I cannot tell you how many times they were happy that I was a Black male and treating them. Conversation. I was spending way too much time in their rooms, chatting with them and talking with them. And I was with an orthopedic surgeon, and they tend to want to move pretty fast. But I was soaking it up because it was really enjoyable to be appreciated and to give them a positive experience.
That's awesome.
Thank you. That's great. There's a question from a participant. Kenny is asking, there's this idea that if a young boy does not get all A's in grade school or even high school, that the road to pursuing a profession in the medical world is over, even if they begin to turn things around academically. Is this true?
So I'll start with this one because that could not be further from the truth. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a first generation college student, college graduate. Going into college, really the only thing I wanted to do was play football. I was an athlete in high school. I earned a scholarship to play in college as well. So I did not focus on my academics very much at all. Quite frankly, I underachieved quite a bit. I graduated with my bachelor's degree with a 2.7 GPA, which is a C plus, somewhere in there, which is not impressive at all, especially not impressive by medical school standards, and in high school it was very much of the same. But after I graduated and decided that I wanted to become a physician, um, I took all the required science courses, and that's when I moved to Texas, and that's actually when I met Dr. Dale. But but I dedicated myself to my schoolwork and to getting good grades, and I performed really well. So when it came time for me to apply to medical school, I spoke about how, yes, I didn't get good grades in high school. I didn't get good grades in undergrad when I was an undergrad. But I turned my life around. I changed. I've grown as a person as well as a student, and my grades and everything else on my application reflected that. So no, it's not true at all that if you don't get good grades in high school, or even in my case, college, that you can't become a physician.
Thank you.
So we have another question from the chat.
It looks like Dr. Cole was about to respond.
Oh.
You unmuted, were you?
Yeah, I was just gonna piggyback on what Mr. Fowler said. You know, I too played football in undergrad. First person in my family to ever go to college, and I focused on football. And didn't do well academically. I graduated undergrad with a 2.4. But after some years of being out of undergrad and reevaluating my purpose, I did well in grad school. I had to have some additional letters of recommendation to get into grad school because my GPA was so low. But I graduated my master's program and my PhD, both subsequently with 4.0s. So there are, because I think this huge push towards diversity and trying to undo what has been done in the past. There is a pathway for us, but there have to be people on the other side who look past our GPA, who look past those tangible things, and to see our intangible talents. Because what we've seen growing up are rappers and athletes. So that's what we strive to be. And when those things fail, it doesn't mean that we're not intellectually sound. It just means that we have not been put in a position where we viewed academics as important. I never knew that I could be a scientist. I knew that I could be a football player because I'd seen many football players before me. If you had asked me when I was 18 years old, if I could be a scientist, I would say you were smoking something illegal. Here I am at 41, I am a scientist. But it's because of those people who saw past the paper, and they were able to see something else that I didn't even see. And so that's what we need more of.
Thank you. Thank you for getting yourself together and getting into the field. Dr. Lewis, were you about to speak?
Yeah, very quickly. I think Dr. Cole brings up a topic that is amazing. And it's a very quick statement that I will say is that what people don't realize is that there are transferable skills. What it takes to be successful as an athlete, believe it or not, if you can get to that young man and have a conversation with them, that commitment, that drive, that determination, going to the gym at a certain amount of time, trying to run, trying to essentially get in marathons, trying to get the speed up, all the intangibles that are necessary to do very well is actually no different than what I'm doing right now as a physician. I'm waking up, I'm trying to eat healthy, I'm struggling, but I'm trying to eat healthy. I'm trying to put my study in. Instead of the weight room, I got these books. They're very, very heavy. Okay, it's about 8:00 p.m. Most people will be like, all right, time's off. Let me go do something else. I'm like, you know what? Let me get a little bit more in. It's the exact same intangibles that are required. They're transferable skills. The problem is that because there's so few people that look like me, individuals will only know that the sports is the way out, or to be a rapper, or to be the other things, or to be what everybody else in their community is. But because there's only 2% of me, and even less in research, to be honest with you, that opportunity does not exist. And those transferable skills are wasted somewhere else.
Yeah, let me just add one more thing. So I completely agree with that, and I actually wrote about that in my personal statement to medical school. I spoke about how, like growing up, just like Dr. Cole and Lewis mentioned, the only thing that I saw myself being was a professional athlete, because it was very easy to turn on the TV. You see a special about a professional athlete that came from the same challenged background that you did, but they were somehow able to make it out and reach the height of their profession as an athlete. So it's easy for a young boy like myself to be like, you know what, he did it, so I can do it as well. But we don't typically hear those stories about people that look like us, that are in academically centric professions. And I also mentioned how I was going to use like my drive with athletics to become a better student. And I serve on the admissions committee here at Ohio State, and we value athletes a lot, and we take more of a holistic approach and looking at applicants. So if you have good grades, that's only one third of the way to getting an acceptance here at Ohio State, and that's why of all non-HBCU medical schools, Ohio State has the second most diverse medical school in the country. Because like was already mentioned, grades isn't everything. It's a part of it. It's a part that you can't really get away from, but that actually really doesn't matter, because if you work hard enough and if you put in the effort, you're just as smart and just as able to get decent or good grades as anyone else in the majority.
You know,
Very true. That's very true.
I know we have to move on to the next question, but I just want to echo a couple of things that are really important. First, Dr. Cole and Dr. Lewis's discussion about athletics. Athletics really do prime you for good study habits, good time management skills, good hard work ethic. So we should not be in positions of saying, oh, you can't do athletics. You can do the athletics and you can do the study. And there are models of folks who have done it very well. I'm going to blend this with my second comment, and that is we also need to consider the pathways, that there are different pathways for people to take to reach their ultimate goal. So one of the things that struck me as I was watching the movie was Nate Hughes, who played in the NFL. And so I actually paused and took a picture of the screen as I watched this section, because it said Nate Hughes, NFL, registered nurse, and then anesthesiologist. That's not a traditional path that a person would take to become a physician, right? And so I did a little bit more background research on him. He graduated from nursing school before going into the NFL. He worked as a nurse in the summers when he was not playing, when this NFL season wasn't playing. After that, he went back to school, got an advanced degree in nursing, a master's degree in nursing, and then decided to go to medical school. So let's consider that there are a multitude of ways in which an individual, if you want to become a doctor, in the broad sense of the PhD, the DNP, or whatever designation the doctorate holds, there are multiple ways of getting there. And even if it's an MD, you can take some very non-traditional paths to doing that. And in doing so, you actually enrich yourself as a physician, as a doctor, and you enrich the lives of your patients because you bring all of that with you. It doesn't just stop and say, okay, I'm a doctor, that's it. We bring everything that we've experienced with us to the benefit of our patients, to the benefit of our research participants, to the benefit of everything that we do. So if grades aren't good in initially kind of one pathway, seek another path. There are multiple ways of getting to the end goal.
Thank you. Cynthia, I'm sorry. I think you had something from the audience.
Yeah, there's a couple of things. I know there's a comment. I don't know if you're an Alicia or an Alicia. But she was just wondering about the multitude of issues that individuals may relate to others besides color. You know, a patient with addictions may respond better to a recovering provider, regardless of color, or a sexual trauma patient to someone who can relate to that experience over color. However, all patients need to see more Black male providers for all of the reasons encompassed in the documentary. I think we would all agree on that. And I think you've spoken to that a little bit. I don't know if anybody wants to add anything to that. There is another comment that I really want to get in because it's from my supervisor. And it's something that we talked about after we watched the documentary. The summit or the camp that Dr. Dale offered to the young, well, I guess it was teens and grade school. She wondered if the library were to offer a summit similar to that. Do you think it would be useful in inspiring local kids to think of medicine as a profession? And would any of you or your colleagues consider joining that kind of thing?
I think something like that would be worthwhile. I think it may also be useful to take a look and see what also currently exists already. I know that because I've been asked to have conversations and speak for smaller, similar things that have been created, either as part of the University of Rochester's commitment to trying to enrich other opportunities. And actually the local schools here, believe it or not, have some programs that are geared toward individuals from social economic status and other opportunities. And I've been able to speak with them. So I think if the library was to create an opportunity, that would be great. If there's an opportunity to collaborate, that may be great as well.
Thank you.
I think that's actually what we need more of, right? We need more exposure, right? We need to talk to more kids. We need to get in front of more individuals. It's not, everybody is not, set up to be a doctor or a researcher. So we can't look at a kid and say, you're wrong for wanting to go to the NFL, or you're wrong for wanting to be an artist or a rapper or whatever, a musician. But the more people that we can interact with, we can find those diamonds in the rough. We can initiate the thought process in the mind of a young person that says, this too is possible. Because Dr. Lewis told me it was possible. And not only did Dr. Lewis tell me it was possible, but he's done it. And I like him and I want to be around him. And maybe he's going to take me in and take me to lunch, or take me and let me observe him in the clinic. And then we could see it's much more than what meets the eye. It's not just this boring thing that I've been told I'm not able to do. It's not just chemistry or these boring subject matters, but I can actually make an impact. And I think that we need more of those opportunities to get out. And there are so few of us. It's disheartening. I am the only researcher, the only male Black researcher at the U of R. Can you comprehend that? Right? The only, right? Someone called me the white unicorn. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, there's something wrong there.
And it's because we're not modeling ourselves. We're not pouring in. We're not showing these young kids what the opportunities are. We're not showing their parents what the opportunities are, because if you talk to a kid's parents nowadays, they think their child has more of an opportunity to play a sport than they do to go to the U of R. How many kids are we actually even recruiting academically to the U of R out of the RCSD? Almost zero. That's a problem there, because that community is not our focus. Let's not look over the elephant in the room. The built society was to send a Black man to prison, not to a with a gunshot wound. But the built society was to take the Black man out of the community. There are those of us who have been blessed. But let's not act as if this was not intentional. We have to try to be active in undoing what America has been so proactive in doing.
So I'll echo the comments of my colleagues and just add in that if we were to do a summit, it wouldn't be enough. One event is not enough to get people interested. One event, one exposure is not enough to keep people on a track that's going to put them in the path of success, whatever that means for them. So while I'll go on public record, I'd be happy to be a part of a summit. It can't just be one event. It has to be ingrained throughout the community. There have to be multiple opportunities for us to engage. There has to be a vested community interest in raising this up. You know, Dr. Dale, when he was talking, in the video, one of the points that he was asking is, who's to blame for this? And he raises a really interesting argument. Is it society's fault because of systemic oppression? Or is it because our communities are investing in this in ways in which we can support young men and young women in terms of advancing careers in medicine or science? And that's a critical conversation. That requires a lot of reflection and a lot of soul searching. While we, the folks that you see here on this panel, have established some modicum of success, and I think that we would all say we're still striving for more success and still striving to become better. It wasn't just on our own efforts. We had people that were helping us. We had family members that were helping us, had absolutely no idea what medicine, nursing, science research, those things are, but they're still there supporting us. And so how do we raise communities to help support individuals who want to move forward in this direction? And that's a critical conversation that we have to have beyond just having one summit. One event is great as a stimulus, as a Kickstarter, but what are we going to do after that? How are we going to keep it going? How are we going to keep the momentum flowing? And I know here at the School of Nursing, we have a couple of programs that we're working on in terms of being community focused and in helping to introduce people into the nursing profession. But even that, we still need more. We need more. It has to be continuous engagement.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you. I appreciate your comments very much. Looks like we have some more in the chat. Darlene, you want to?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure. So from our very own Jeff, have any of you had to personally deal with the skepticism in the minority community surrounding vaccines, medications, procedures, etc.?
I'll talk to that one. I have absolutely. There's no doubt about that. And the thing is the hesitancy for the vaccine and just the medical system in general. It's deep rooted and it's pretty valid. Like if you take a look back at American history and how we as African American treated. But I've spoken to several, like I literally can't count how many people in regards to the vaccine. One of the people I was at the barbershop. I was getting a haircut, and my barber was not believing in the vaccine whatsoever, as well as another kid that was sitting in there after me. And honestly, my intention was not to try to necessarily convince him to get the vaccine. But what I was really trying to do was to debunk some of the things that they've heard and read on Facebook, and because that seems to be the most credible source nowadays. But I was very pleased with afterward how both of them mentioned how the first chance they get that they were going to get the vaccine, because the advice and the knowledge and whatnot was coming from someone that looked like them and someone that they can trust, rather than someone from the majority who African Americans tend not to to be able to have much trust in.
Does anybody else want to comment on that, or should I move on to the next?
Yeah, I mean, I have the same interaction as Mr. Fowler. We've actually held several webinars with the community at large, with the help of Zeta Phi Beta sorority and Phi Beta Sigma, in just trying to be transparent about the process with the community, because I've had some very intense debates with individuals. And, you know, one thing that you hear about often is the Tuskegee experiment, you know, and it was so long ago. And as a researcher, it kind of hurts me to, you know, to be an African-American or a brown person in an environment. And I'm saying to you that I am a researcher and I am valid. I'm telling you that this is important and we need to do this, and, you know, to get such kickback, but I understand it. I understand their distrust and the way that they feel about medicine in general. And again, when you don't have people in an environment who understand who you are as a person, it's very difficult to trust them. And one thing that I also understand is our community, when we talk about medicine or police or teachers, or we talk about it as one entity. It's they, it's them. It's basically the system against us. So it's hard to delineate between a researcher that's giving you a vaccine and a police officer that's been seen shooting a Black man. They, the untrained mind does not differentiate between those. So they all come from one system. And that system has been in place for so long to oppress Black people that's where, to me, the root of the distrust comes from.
I hope not to play devil's advocate, but just get some discussion. The question that I have is, and Dr. Cole already mentioned it, does the community at large, the Black community, have any validity to their concerns? And we talked about the Tuskegee. So that actually is true. And maybe Dr. Cole can speak to this a little bit better than I can, at least from my understanding and some of many others. When it comes to research and clinical trials, African-American recruitment is actually very, very small. And if you were to look at some of the research into the vaccine as it was created, at least in the beginning, I won't speak towards the residual recruitment, but in the beginning, you'll notice that there was African-American recruitment as less than 5%. And that's very, very small. What you'll also see when you start to research a little bit deeper, that you'll see a lot of the medicine that we currently take have had clinical trials that are predominantly Caucasian men. But you're giving it to everybody, and everybody is not a Caucasian male. So the same exact issue that's happening in even clinical trials and medicine creation is the same thing that's happening in regards to us being so few in number in the medical field. We are just not represented, and it's really unfortunate. Maybe Dr. Cole can speak on that, or Dr. Wharton, because I know they're both in the research, but I think that some of the concerns may be valid. And there's even some people who have decided that perhaps they're not going to say no to a vaccine. They'll just take their time to see how everybody else has done. Maybe I'm guilty. I say that because I just got my second dose, and I perhaps may have delayed it 3 or 4 weeks for good reasons. But I will say, at least on this, that I feel very good, no symptoms. And I would like to be an advocate for the next person who is hesitant as well, because I think that there are some concerns that may be valid.
No, I think you're absolutely right. So first and foremost, when we talk about underrepresented communities and their involvement in either vaccine research or research in general, let's pause for a moment and not blame the victims, when we're asking the question, but rather say, is what they're saying, is it justified? Because in this case, it is justified and it has been justified. And Dr. Lewis, you brought up such an important point. Both you, Dr. Lewis, and Dr. Cole brought up an important point is when we conceptualize, or when communities conceptualize things, they conceptualize it as us versus them. And we need to stop and we need to unpack that to understand, what is this us versus them? Where does this come from? And how do we discharge a lot of that emotionality that's there? Because that is probably the number one thing that kind of blocks people, because our guard is up. You know, there's a history here, it's us, it's them, and that's warranted. If we look at history, if we look at studies, particularly in the early phases, you know, there is an underrepresentation of the underrepresented groups, right? So that's problematic in and of itself. But as a society, we kind of say, oh, it's because of this thing. And then we say, okay, and now we need to bring more people in, without really taking the time to sit and unpack everything that's there. And that takes a lot of time and that takes a lot of effort. So I think that concern amongst communities of color is absolutely warranted and it's absolutely valid. And we have to do better jobs of first hearing the community and hearing what they're really saying, as opposed to looking for a quick answer. Well, what's the reason why they don't want to take it? And really doing our due diligence to unpack things. And a lot of that takes a lot of radical transparency to do, but also providing opportunities for people to be involved, and not just in instances where there's an emergent disease or an emergent crisis that's coming up. And so one of the things that I'll just mention here is that the NIH has a program called All of Us, the All of Us campaign, where it's trying to get people from underrepresented groups, not just African Americans, but across the board, to become more involved in research from a number of perspectives. If it's just having more knowledge about it, but then providing them opportunities to get involved in research studies and understand the research process. So those are my two quick comments on that. But thank you for raising this, because this is an incredibly important issue, and I appreciate you playing devil's advocate.
Another viewer asks if there is also a discrepancy with Black women in the medical field. Should there be a, Black women in white coats documentary? Are the numbers as bleak as the Black men in the?
I think that you can always say that there's a lack of representation of any group in any field. But when you look at the achievements of brown women or African-American women, I don't like Black or the word African-American either. I'm trying to get to a point where I want to know, I want to understand, what do I want to be called? And at 41, that's very discouraging, right? You have a man of my stature who doesn't even know what he should be referred as. And we try to understand what the problem in this country is. But when you look at the incarceration rate of Black men, when you walk through our hospital, you see Black women physicians, not a lot of them, but way, probably double or quadruple what you see in terms of Black men. And that can be true in any profession. But when you go into the Black community and you see who the leaders of the Black community are, which are women, you understand why they are a lot farther ahead in this society than men are in our culture. And once again, I would say that was very intentional, and it's because of the built society.
Yeah, I would also echo what Dr. Cole said. So there are more Black women physicians than male, and is even when you look at the numbers that are being accepted into medical school, there's more Black women being accepted into medical school than Black males are. That's not to discredit or say that what the Black women are doing is not important, and we can only focus on the Black men. But Black women, they're holding their own. They're doing pretty good. And I remember reading somewhere that black women are, when you look at all of the the blacks, whites, Puerto Ricans down the line, only in the blacks do you see women out earning men. Everywhere else, men out earn the women. But like I said, black women, they're holding their own, and they're doing their part for sure.
But then I think the question then becomes, why is that? Why is society so comfortable with elevating the brown or the African American woman, yet have such a hard time with seeing people that look like me do well or lead? Why is that? Why is society so afraid of my voice? Why did society give control of our communities to the woman and alienate and imprison the black men? Let's understand what the elephant in the room is. Society doesn't want me to be successful. Society don't want to see too many more Obamas, right? Trump was a result of Obama. That's how society responded to a black man being highly successful. We are exactly where society wants us. So when you compare our plight to that of LGBTQ or any other race or ethnicity or gender, we are in a league of our own.
Well, we got a response from, I believe, Balin A. Durr, MD. When you ask why is it that they fight with black men, he says, because they see black men as a worthy adversary. Men war with men.
And to add to that, I would say they.
Excuse me, I just want to make a correction. I'm a lady person over here, and it's pronounced like Allen with a B, Ballin. So that's Dr. Balin A. Durr.
I apologize for that.
It's okay. I just say I'm so glad we're having this conversation. And one, I'm a child and adolescent psychiatrist. Also see adults. And my undergrad degree is in sociology, and I have a minor in African American studies. So this topic, this subject is near and dear to my heart. And I think one of the important things to do to bring to this conversation is to have it from a place of understanding how important the economics are. And oftentimes when we have this conversation, that's kind of touched upon, but it's not nearly flushed out, I think, as much as it needs to be. When you understand that we were brought to this country as a commodity, human beings turned into capital in order for other people's profit and power, then that should give you an understanding of why we're having the experience that we're having, whether it's in medicine, whether it's in politics, whether it's in corporate, whatever the arena is, it's why it is. And I made the comment about, they come at you all because who do men war with? They war with other men, by and large. So obviously, if you all are the leadership, the simple saying, what do? You cut off the head and the rest falls. You all are the leadership. You all are, so they're the ones that they're coming after you all for that purpose, because you all are not there to provide, you're not there to protect. So we're kind of left floundering. And it just makes perfect sense if you think about it that way. You all are a worthy adversary. So of course, they're going to try to take you out of the game, make you, whether it's in a prison, whether it's in a cemetery, whether it's in a drug house, whether it's feeling that you all are unworthy or ineffective. I tell people, and I was an athlete also in college. What's the purpose of trash talking? I call it the 3Ds: disturb, distract, defeat. Carter G. Woodson says, when you control what a man thinks, you never have to worry about what he will do. If you convince him that he is inadequate, he will seek the back door on his own. And if there is no back door, his very nature will demand one. So we need to understand what's happening and why it's happening. And if you do that, then you change your own identity. In the remake of Roots, the overseer said, you don't buy a slave, you got to make a slave. And when I heard that, I was just like, drop the mic. How do you make a slave? What you do is you strip them of their identity, their value, their purpose, and their possibilities. And you say, this is what your name is. This is who you are. This is what you can do. This is where you can go. You don't have control over yourself, your bodies, your families, your money, your nothing, unless I say you do. And then when you internalize that identity, you internalize that unworthiness, the belief that you are not a human being who is deserving and worthy, then you act based upon what you believe. And you live at the level of your disbelief. You live at the level of your inadequacies. So we as a people need to understand what's happening and why it was done, which was, again, to make us a commodity for a small number of people's profit and power. If you understand that too, then you understand, why is it that 4 people in this country have twice as much wealth as the bottom 50%? Why is that? That's not about color. Oh yes, actually it is. It's about the color green, the color of money, and everything else is a subset of that.
Thank you. That was very enlightening. Does anybody want to piggyback off the?
Come on, Mr. Cole.
Yeah,
I see you smiling over there. Dr. Cole, come on.
Hey, listen, I was just posing the questions. I didn't ask for a response. The questions were rhetorical because of the reasons why that you just acknowledged. So that's what I was trying to get, basically everybody to think of. We are where we are because it was intended this way. Now we have to undo what individuals have been so intentional in doing. So when Dr. Mitchell says it can't just be a one-off, we can't just hold one event. I think someone in the chat said in Arizona they do something every week, once a week, every year, to help, to get into the community. I mean, we could do that for the next 60 years. And it's still, we still would just be scratching the surface, because how long has it taken for us to get to where we are today as a people? When I look at the history of the U of R, and I look at someone like Dr. Whipple, I think it's his name, and how he was so for slavery, and he would not admit a Black doctor or a Black medical student into the U of R. Let's talk about how we got here. Let's not talk about where we are, because that's not going to help us to resolve the issue. We're trying to undo what society has done so well. And I mean, like the doctor just said, we were stripped of our identity. I'm reading a book now about these Ethiopian Jewish individuals who were saved from Ethiopia and taken back to Jerusalem. Am I from Ethiopia? Am I from Ghana? I don't know. I don't have a clue who I am as a person. So when you talk about what I do for a profession, how can I look at what I do for a profession when I don't know who I am? I will never know who I am. How do I teach my kids who they are? I cannot.
Well, I would beg to differ with that a little bit, which is, even if we don't know, quote unquote, where we came from, in our essence and our being, we are uniquely wonderful and designed for a unique and wonderful divine purpose. And if you can hold on to that, because some of knowing our history in terms of personal history, we'll never be able to discern and figure out. I don't know who my paternal grandfather is. I don't know his name. I don't know any of that history, right? I don't know any of that family. And I don't know that I'll ever be able to recover that. But that doesn't mean that I cannot embrace my unique wonderfulness. And I think that's what we need to remember. I say to people, you have a brain, a heart, liver, kidney, lungs, pick one. And the reality is if you only pick one, you're still dead. Why? Because those are vital organs. And the liver is not the heart, but most of us are like the liver, wanting to be the heart because the heart's been the one that's celebrated. But without the liver, the body cannot exist. They're each uniquely designed for their function. And so they do their function in a way that only they can. And so we need to embrace our own unique wonderfulness. We need to understand there's hundreds, if not 1,000 different flavors of ice cream. Nobody likes the same flavor of ice cream. Just because I like ice, a flavor, and you don't, doesn't mean it's nasty, and vice versa. So we need to, despite what other people's opinions are, we need to understand that just because I ain't your flavor doesn't mean I ain't delicious.
Yes.
Right? We need to understand. We didn't start off as a people when we came to the shores of this country, brought here against our will. You know, we come from a people and a continent of great thinkers and creators and architects and military strategists. It's even if we don't know specific details, we are still a magnificent, brilliant people, capable of manifesting our infinite potential in an infinite number of ways. That's what we need to embrace. But you do need to understand, like you said, how we got here, because if you got to bleed, you darn well better figure it out where it is in order to plug it. If your car isn't working, it's because you ran out of gas. Putting the air in the tires is not going to get your car to running. So we need to, it's important that we understand what it is and why it is in order to deal with it effectively. But understand there's some parts that we may never learn and understand, but it doesn't mean that we can't manifest our wonderfulness.
I'll just touch on 3 quick things. I agree with Dr. Durr. I think the heart is the most important. I definitely agree with that statement. Also, what I would probably say on the previous question is that, you know, why Black females may potentially be a little bit more represented than males. And I agree with Dr. Durr again. I think another statement to say is that it may be that the Black female is more palatable for those at large, and the Black man is seen as a source of hostility. Would probably be a comment that I would add to that.
One thing we didn't discuss was medical school. I think some people may be deterred from applying because of the bills. Like we were saying, you know, the grades might not be a deterrent, but without the grades, you can't get a scholarship. So what advice would we give for people moving forward to pay for medical school?
I gotta jump on this one, unfortunately, because I've heard this question before, and the answer is, what is the end goal? It's such a distraction, but what is the end goal? I assure you, I'm not gonna have a bill when I retire. I can promise you that. In fact, I'm gonna have a surplus of funds and probably have to give it back to my community. That is the big deal picture. That the net worth that you're going to have in even a year is going to be enough to pay back whatever the case may be. I have heard people say, you know what, I don't want to do medical school because I'm going to owe several, potentially $100,000. So therefore, I am going to do this other job that's going to have a whole different, net worth and salary potential, potentially 20%, 30% of what it would be as a physician. And that's fine. But if you want to be a physician, you be a physician. That's going to be what satisfies you. If you want to be a researcher, Be a researcher. Don't let the funds deter you from getting there, because no one is complaining at their retirement party that, oh my goodness, I'm paying this money. That's years ago. You won't even be worried about that. And for the record, I do owe a house right now. And then some people are like, well, was it worth it? I don't know. Ask me in 16 months when I'm a heart surgeon. But for now, I can assure you, I am excited and I am happy for the future. And I implore the next person to not let a dollar sign deter them from the end goal, because that's going to let you understand that it's the end goal.
So I'll actually comment on this one as well, especially being in medical school and taking out those loans every semester. But just like Dr. Lewis said, I am not in the least bit worried about being able to pay off my student loans when I become a physician. I already have a plan on how I'm going to be debt free from my student loans within 3 to 5 years of graduating from medical school, and I'm residency, shall I say? And I am very confident that I'm going to be able to do that. And also, like Dr. Lewis said, that shouldn't be a reason to deter you from becoming a physician. Neither should the length of your training or education. I've heard those things and had those conversations with people as well. If your ultimate goal is to become a physician and be able to improve people's lives and save people's lives, then the route to getting there and the sacrifice that you have to endure in order to get there will be completely worth it in the end.
So I just want to ask a question on top of that question, because, like I said, I interview medical students for the university, and, I always talk to kids about what their background is. And, you have kids who, apply to 20, 30, 40 schools at a ticket of about $500 per application. So when you talk about someone who comes from a disadvantaged community, now, how do you talk to that person about competing when they can only afford to apply to 2 or 3 schools based on their financial stance at that very moment, relative to someone who both of their parents are physicians and they have the funds to apply for an unlimited amount of universities and therefore give themselves a much better opportunity to be successful in being recruited to a program?
I think part of the thing is, and to dovetail on what the other 2 gentlemen, is that I agree with them. When it comes to anything, we need to make the decision first. Do I want to do this? And is it yes? Then figure out how to get the funds, then figure out how to get the training, then figure out how to do those things. So as opposed to saying, there's this obstacle, that reason, the other reason why I can't make the decision to do what is calling me to do. So I just wanted to affirm that if once you may say yes, then you can figure out what the next step is and how to get those things. As far as, and to follow up with what you're saying, I think that's part of the issue. I had a conversation with someone earlier, long one with her, and she has a PhD. And again, there's a lot of focus on that she came from an impoverished background. And I'm saying to you, that's your experience, but it's not who you are. It doesn't define your possibilities, honey. That's what I said to her. I said, there's, again, your wonderfulness is there. So you have to be targeted. In those instances, if you don't have a lot of resources, you got to take a scalpel approach instead of a hammer approach. You got to be directed and you got to be skillful. Figure out the programs that are well suited for you. There are still scholarships and things that are available that are not an academic base, that are maybe, if you have a desire to work with underserved communities or other things. But if you want to do something, then make the decision to do it, then focus on solutions and find a way. Don't look at what you don't have. Look at what you have and make the most and best use of what you have, because not everybody's going to have your experiences. Not everybody's going to have your gifts, your strengths, and your talents. So magnify what you have as opposed to your excess focus on what you don't have and what you don't bring to the table.
I think that's very sage advice. Don't let anything stand in your way and go after your dreams. I just wanted to ask if Charles McKnight was ever able to join us, if he's here. We haven't heard from him, I don't believe.
I heard from Shamika, who's with us tonight. Charles is
Okay.
having connectivity issues, and he apologizes that he couldn't be with us. I did reach out to him and tell him he could join us at any time, but at this point, it looks like he will not be.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we weren't overlooking him. We had planned to, end our evening around 7:30, but this has been a very eye-opening conversation, great dialogue. Are there any issues that we haven't touched upon, any questions that haven't been asked, but you panelists, have some information to share with us?
Were there any more discussion questions that you'd like to bring up, Shator, or do you think we've covered most of those?
One question was, what strategies can we implement here in our own community starting today that can help to increase the number of Black men going into medicine? So you guys have touched upon that we need to be more vocal. It needs to be a daily thing, not a one-time event, and come together as a community. Would anybody like to further that conversation?
Yeah, I would like to comment, and which should not come as a surprise, but I think that this word intentionality is one thing that I would like to focus on, because that's one thing that I have to talk to my group about. When we sit down and we talk about how are we going to approach this community about vaccines, and my response to them is we should have approached this community before we needed them for vaccines. We have to be intentional. First of all, we've got to show this community that they're loved and adored, and that they do have something. So many people talk bad about affirmative action. And I say, if not for affirmative action, how do we find those Allen Iversons of medicine who would otherwise be overlooked? We have got to delve into the community and do things that are outside of looking for scientists, looking for someone to take a vaccine, looking for someone to be in our study on diabetes. We've got to hold outreach in the community to help individuals, not just give them a handout, but do things where we actually are interacting with the community. We don't have to be giving them money, and that's the thing that we want to do. We think they're poor. Let's throw $50 at them and have them come in. Let's promise them $50 and then have them come in, because we don't want to go sit down and talk to this person and find out what's on their mind. We have to show this community that they are worthy. I mean, that we love them just as much as we love any community, and we think that they have something to give other than meeting a quota, a diversity quota, which is what I think that all of these initiatives are at this point.
Yeah.
So I'll give a little bit of gentle pushback on that last piece that you said in terms of these initiatives being about diversity. Because you started off by talking about helping communities to know that they're loved and adored. And I think that that's where it starts, from a genuine place of, I see value in you, not for what you're going to be in 10 years or whatnot, but I see value in you right now. I see the potential that you have to do something great and wonderful, however that is that you want to do it. And I think that that's where we start. You raised a really great point about intentionality. And so in some of the other work that I do outside of my university job is mentorship for groups of young men who are pursuing a multitude of different things. I have some formal mentees and some informal mentees, but all of that is very intentional. When I go speak at places, I hand out business cards to people and I say, you know what, feel free to contact me. And I'm genuine in that. But the response rate that I get back from that is almost zero. And I don't know how to put myself out anymore for people to be available to them, because I think that there's some critical things that we have to do when we're working with communities, and that is we cannot afford to play into stereotypes of, oh, that's Dr. So-and-so. And yes, people should be lauded for their careers and for their achievements, but we also need to let people know that we're real people too. Everyday people, the same things that you're experiencing are the same things that I'm experiencing. I don't escape that because I have an office at the U of R. In fact, it probably causes me more issues and more things that I have to deal with, and more stress and more anxiety and more health concerns. But I, as an individual, am willing to put that out there for people so that they can understand what this is. You know, I come from a very different perspective from most of the people on this panel, being in the School of Nursing. And so you may have witnessed me not saying a whole lot when we're having the discussion about women, because it's a little bit of a flipped perspective here in nursing, right? Because women are the majority at 90%, right? They're still minority in terms of women of color in our profession, but way outnumber the men in nursing. Black men in nursing, to be specific. When I was going through my doctorate program, there were 10 Black males in the country who had a PhD. You could count them on your fingers. It's since improved, but think about that. There are only 10. And one of them happened to be here at the U of R, and that was the draw for me to come here. But it was breaking down a lot of those stereotypes of, well, what is a Black man in nursing? What do you do? Well, I do a lot.
So yeah, you're well needed. I know a lot of people that are grateful to have Black male nurses, as you guys were talking about before, not having representation. They can share things with you that they might not necessarily have shared with their family, and they appreciate your physical strength as well.
But so that's part of it, right? And so we need to stop, we need to break down some of those stereotypes about, oh, we're strong. Well, of course we're strong, but you know who else is strong? Every other nurse is working on that floor. Right? It's body mechanics. It's how you move. It's not just your physical strength. But we need to break down barriers. And so when I walk into a room in my early career as a nurse, and a patient would say, "Oh, could you get my nurse from me?" I would turn around and then I walk back in and say, "Okay, how can I help you?" And that's one way of kind of, again, breaking down these stereotypes of, well, you can't be the nurse because you're a guy, or because you're Black, and because you're a Black guy, like, why not? Absolutely, why not? When I graduated, when I was leaving my job from working on the floor, I was the highest educated nurse on that floor. I had a master's degree. My nurse manager didn't have a master's degree. I was already prepared, dually prepared as a family nurse practitioner and a community-based nursing clinical specialist. And I still got patients saying, "Oh, could you get my nurse for me?" Here I am. What more do you want? And we have to break down these barriers and these stereotypes of what we assume these positions are, or what we assume who can aspire to be in these positions.
But we know there's stereotypes and things. I mean, and I'll have patients sitting in my office and call me Miss Durr. They know I'm Dr. Durr, and they'll call me Miss Durr. And I say to them, so if I were a man, would you be calling me Mr. Durr, or would you be calling me Dr. Durr? So, and of course the answer is they would be calling me Dr. Durr if I were a man. They wouldn't be calling me Mr. Durr. So, you know, people they have their biases, and they have their perspectives, and some of them limited, and some of them, you know, some of them more open. And so, of course, to me, the thing to do, of course, is for me and for us as human beings, not to live down to other people's limited expectations. And, you know, my intention, frankly, in joining this conversation today was actually because I'm here in the Chicago area, and there's an organization, I Am Able Foundation, ABEL, that did the same program, but it was Monday. And when I was kind of, you know, doing some research on it, I saw this program was coming up today, and I said, I want to reach out and connect with people who are outside this area, who I can continue to have this conversation with, and that we can work with each other, and not of course only discuss ideas, but come up with some solutions that we can implement. It's been kind of hinted at, but not quite said. There's in the way I say it is this way: in order to become good or great at anything, it requires two things: study and practice. So, as a physician or as an athlete, I didn't go to the gym, 30 minutes a day, 5 minutes, 2 or 3 days from now, skip a week, then do an hour. And the same thing is true as being a student or physician. Become good or great in anything is consistency, persistence, and persistence. So we need to do this on an ongoing basis. We need to connect with each other. We need to leverage each other's brilliance in order to bring a variety of perspectives and solutions that are going to benefit all of us. And so my deepest desire is absolutely that I hope that we will extend beyond this conversation tonight and continue to build upon this and support and help each other individually, but of course also as a people.
Thank you, Dr. Durr. We appreciate your comment so much. And I think it's great that you joined us from Chicago to listen to what we had to say here. There's a comment from Melissa. She wanted to know if everyone on the panel is local to Rochester. And secondly, where can we go locally to participate and get involved? Not sure exactly what you mean by that, Melissa. Do you want to elaborate a little bit? Melissa still here?
You can unmute, Melissa, if you'd like to explain your question.
Hi. Yes, I guess maybe I missed the first part of the introduction, so I wasn't sure if the panel is all local, or it sounds to me like they are not. Maybe some of them are, but what is happening here locally in Rochester, that, if we are compelled to start, building this as a movement, where do we start? Where do we go?
There's a program that I was able to participate here, actually in this institution, and that program is called SURF, Summer Undergraduate Research Fellowship and Early Assurance Program. Those are two different programs, and again, it may not be applicable to you because I actually don't know your age or where you are in life. But as I was saying, there are some programs that are here or there, they're scattered, that are trying to do these same things. And I took a part of both of those programs, teaching suturing and knot tying session, trying to instill with young undergraduates and predominantly African Americans that they can be considered for a specialty in medicine, potentially be a physician. For those interested in surgery, that it is possible, that it is feasible. All of those individuals, when they go to the hospital, when they have surgery, predominantly they're seeing Caucasian men. And to be more specific, they're seeing 6 foot tall Caucasian men. Like, it's actually a specific stereotype that has been the predominance of some of these fields. So there are some places that we can go. It sounds like local community here, as far as the library may be considering putting on an effort. I would say that would be a great opportunity. Happy to participate, just like Dr. Wharton said. But there are a few other things depending on what year or age. The high school programs here, I think East High School has been participating and doing some opportunities. I took one thing that they were doing not too long ago. So there are some things that exist. Unfortunately, they're probably not all completely spelled out, and that's probably where we can assist, and perhaps a library to actually make a list of the opportunities and programs that exist so that people can know that they are here and can be funneled into those opportunities.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm hoping that mental health and psychiatry can become a part of this conversation. Obviously not tonight, but the fact of the matter is the more ill your brain is, the more limited your life is, because everything we experience is coming through the brain except for some small reflexes, right? And, you know, physicians are committing suicide 1 a day. Obviously depression, anxiety, overdoses, suicides, all that is up in the context of the pandemic. Obviously, with a great deal of stress that we as a people and Black men in particular experience, that stress over time, chronic emotional dis-ease becomes physical disease. And so I'm hoping that that can become, again, a part of the conversation, because if your brain health is impaired, if the thoughts you think are limited, then your life is going to be limited. So I hope you all will consider that. And as a child psychiatrist, there's only 7,000 of us in the whole country. I wanted to bring that to people's attention. We all know that there's a huge shortage of psychiatrists. There's even a greater shortage of child psychiatrists. So y'all know that the numbers of child psychiatrists that look like me or look like our panelists is a tiny number. And so there's no shortage of work. And I promise you, I am far from poor.
I wanted to mention to you, Dr. Durr, that Dr. McKnight, who's been having the connectivity issues, he is, am I muted? No. He is a mental health counselor at the University of Rochester, pediatric behavioral and health and wellness. And so he would have been able to add much to the conversation. He is listening to us.
Okay, well, I would love to connect with him if he's interested.
I direct the community outreach program out of the U of R as well. Currently, it's for athletes at East High School, but we also, in the Center for Musculoskeletal Research, have a Med Club initiative where we actually go out into the community and introduce school students, adolescent age students, to science. So we go out and we do different science projects with them once a month, and that's a part of Champion Academy. So in my department, we have several initiatives. I'm also a part of SURF, where we allow, where I give medical students, minority medical students, an opportunity to come in and work in my lab during the summer months. So I do have several, it's all in an effort to increase the exposure of science to the community. But in the Center for Musculoskeletal Research, we're definitely trying to do our part here in Rochester to increase the diversity in science.
From the School of Nursing's perspective, we have two programs that we're running. One is through East High, and I don't remember the name of it off the top of my head. I think it's just the East High initiatives, where we actually bring students through and they'll actually create a poster presentation related to health topics. And then we have another program, See All You Can Be, which I think it's either the high school or the grade schools, where we help children to envision careers in science and nursing. I will take a more broad approach to this and relate it back to something that Dr. Cole said earlier in terms of affirmative action programs. And I think that it's incumbent upon people not to just look for only science-specific things, but to look for programs that provide enrichment, and so enrichment from a broad perspective. I would not be here today if it weren't for going through an Upward Bound program, if it weren't for going through a Inroads program, if it wasn't for going through a variety of things that showed me the potential and opportunities that exist, not just within science, but within industry, within a whole bunch of other things. And so as we're thinking about providing young people with opportunities, or seeking out opportunities for young people to become engaged in, I would say don't always just look for what's local. Look for what's national, look for what's international, because that worldview is what's really going to help people become motivated and stay motivated to pursue something that they may not have seen themselves in their local communities.
So you guys have touched upon this a lot, but anybody want to address success again? Our last question was, how would you define success as it pertains to increasing the number of Black men in the medical field? And if not, if you have anything, you know, closing remarks that you wanted to make, we'd love to hear them.
As far as closing remarks, I would just like to I would hope that everyone can that attended this can come away with knowing that regardless of whatever circumstances that you may be under, that you can become a physician, or you can become a scientist or a nurse, or really whatever it is that you want to be. And as panelists, we're all here and we're examples of that. And I'm pretty sure we all took different paths to get to where we are. So you can definitely do it, and there is support, and there is a network of people that look like you that are willing to help you get there.
And I guess I would like to just close by saying that, you know, I think it starts, you know, we talked about earlier who's responsible for the lack of diversity in medicine. And I don't think, you know, I think we have to go a step further and say, how do we take ownership? And so that's what I try to do. I want to be the change that I want to see in the world. So I'm not going to sit around and wait for people who don't look like me to have some pity on my community and try to help my community. What I do is I go into the community and say, fight for yourself. Parents, fight for your child. Children, go to school, get your education, fight for yourself. So I think it's imperative that as people of minority individuals who are in a place, I will blend that in my response to what is success. To me, success is making sure that young men who look like me, who grew up like I grew up, can now understand that what I've done is possible for them as well. And that will be my life's work. I think that I've been given this opportunity because a power that's greater than me knew that I would use this opportunity to help young men who look like me. And I would not have obtained success if I stopped that fight at any point in my journey. So I might retire from research one day. I will never retire from trying to bring young Black men out of the position that they're in today.
Thank you.
I guess I'll also close. I want to thank everybody for allowing me to be a part of this conversation. And I do want to give full credit for the individuals who are putting this together, that I do think that this is a first step. We should congratulate ourselves and congratulate the job that you guys are doing, continuing this conversation and enlightening those people who are here to receive the information that's being provided. So I do want to give full credit that although much is required, this is a first step.
So I too want to thank the library and all the panelists and our moderator, Ms. Banks, and want to offer people another perspective about success. For me, there is no success or failure. There's only success because every time I take an action, I create a result. So to me, we tend to define success as results I want and failure as results I don't want. But if you look at it as success is just success, because anytime I take an action, I create a result, to me, it helps me to be mindful and aware. Am I taking an action that's consistent with the results I want to have? But either way, I'm successful all the time. And I just want to again say thank you to my beautiful brown and chocolate brothers on this panel, and Mr. Wharton with those gorgeous locks, and my other brothers again in your wonderfulness. I thank you. I appreciate you for being here, for your passion, for your intelligence, for your brilliance, for your creativity, and all that you all have contributed to us tonight.
Yes, all right.
Very well said.
Go ahead, Dr. Wharton wants to say something.
Yeah, so first, thank you to Dr. Durr for complimenting the hair. Having a bad day, but we're getting through. I want to begin by thanking everyone who has put this together, but also who's been kind of watching and providing questions. This is an important forum. Not only an important forum, this is an essential forum. And as Dr. Lewis said, you know, this is a great first step. I'd like to see us continue with this. And so I've always put myself out there. I am publicly available. You can find me by just Googling my name. It comes up. My faculty profile page will come up. You'll probably see a whole bunch of other stuff that comes up. I'm on Twitter as well. Reach out, because this is the work that we do, that I don't mind staying late on a Friday night to be here with you. I'll close by talking about success. And so my definition of success, or what I look for in terms of success, isn't at the individual level. It really is at the population level. And so when we see changes in the health disparities that affect populations of color, then we will achieve success. When we get to a point where we are able to systematically impact the social determinants of health, then we will achieve success. Then I will be happy. Then I will maybe not retire, but go on a little bit of a vacation from this work. But until then, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And it is a constant fight and a constant battle. And, you know, just as my colleagues here have all, maybe they've not pledged themselves, maybe that's too much for me to say, but they have demonstrated their commitment to this work. I will remain committed to this work as well. But I do want to thank all of the organizers, thank the libraries for hosting this. This has been phenomenal.
We thank all of you for joining us as well. Mr. Fowler, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I already had my closing remarks. I don't have anything other that I want to add. Oh, well, I did put my Instagram in the chat. You can always hit me up. I'll be more than willing to answer any questions or anything like that if you wanted to further the discussion or your questions weren't answered tonight. And again, thanks to the library for inviting me to partake in this talk.
I think this has been a very informative night. We thank you all for joining us. Thank Dr. Durr as well for, you know, opening up the hard discussions and leading us down another path. And before we leave, are there any other comments or questions before we let our panelists enjoy their weekend?
I want to thank Shatora for hosting. You did a great job, Shatora, and my colleagues, Darlene Richards and Gabe Pellegrino. They did a lot of the background work. They contacted all our panelists. So it was really, and Jeff Bostic, of course, I'm looking right at his name, who did those wonderful superhero posters. And if you're in downtown Rochester, go look at them in our windows, because we're proudly displaying them. So thank you, everyone. Thank you to the panelists, especially. You guys were terrific. A lot of great information, gave us lots to think about, and I hope we can continue on this road. As Dr. Lewis said, this is a great start. So I hope it is not going to be the finish for us. We do want to go further with this and explore what else we can do. So thank you all, and have a great weekend, everybody.